Okay, next with part two for my horror soundtrack collection. Next we have is From Beyond. The movie's actually not bad to watch. I mean, if you just pay real close attention to it, you will understand exactly what's going on. Next is a deluxe edition soundtrack of Scream. This one is out of print and hard to get. Next is the deluxe edition soundtrack of Scream 2. Next, Scream 3. And of course, Scream 4. I heard rumors that some around next year they're going to be doing a Scream 5, so hopefully that will happen and see how that turns out. Next is Vampires. I love the movie Vampires. I thought James Woods did a hell of a good job in this movie. And as you saw in my end of the month haul, the limited edition soundtrack of Link. I love this movie because the opening music is pretty good. It's got a good beat. Killer Orangutan, Elizabeth Shue's first movie appearance. Love that movie. Another limited edition soundtrack, The House on Sorority Row. I listen to the soundtrack a lot for some reason. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because of the music. I think it's probably just because of the music. Yeah, but the movie's good too. Another bootleg soundtrack I bought at the convention, Freddy's Greatest Hits by the Elm Street Group. Pretty good songs on here. My favorite one on this one is Don't Sleep. Another soundtrack that you saw me display in my end of month haul is a 2-disc edition soundtrack of Tremors. I mean, come on, who doesn't love Tremors and who has not seen these movies? They're pretty awesome. Next is the soundtrack of The Return of the Living Dead. Mostly this has just got the punk rock songs they used in the film, but I wish it had theme music from the film as well. But what can you do? Next is my second favorite vampire movie, The Lost Boys. A lot of good songs on this soundtrack. Next is the soundtrack to the remake of Evil Dead. I love the music to this remake of Evil Dead, and I thought the remake was actually pretty good. Really enjoyed that a lot. Next, soundtrack of Mirrors. This is another one that's also out of print, and I'm glad I got the soundtrack to this because when I saw the film, I thought the music was pretty creepy and scary. Next is the soundtrack to the remake of Fright Night. I know people have their differences. I know the original is better, but I definitely love the remake of Fright Night because I thought Colin Farrell did a hell of a good job as a vampire. Next, the soundtrack to the remake of My Bloody Valentine 3D. I love the music to this film and I love the remake. I definitely enjoy the remake a lot more than the original, even though the original is good too. Next, a remake of Child's Play. I know some people have their differences on it, but the movie is actually not that bad, and I thought Mark Hamill did a hell of a good job as Chucky. Next, House of Wax. Another good remake. Never saw the original though. Next, the remake of The Last House on the Left. I definitely like this remake a lot more than the original. So, next, Hide and Seek. Definitely a very good fun movie. The music to this was absolutely chilling and haunting. Next is the soundtrack to Abominable. This is actually a very fun Bigfoot movie to watch. Killer Bigfoot going on a murderous rampage. This movie is just a lot of fun, and Tiffany Shepard says that her favorite death scene in it where she gets pulled through the window is her favorite death scene that she's done throughout any movie that she's done. So her favorite death scene is in that film. Next is Slither. Yes, slugs invading people's mouths and they turn into the host. Next is Charlie's Farm. The music's actually not bad, and don't be fooled by the back of it because there's actually 16 tracks on this soundtrack. So don't be fooled by the back cover and on the back of the booklet. So there's actually 16 tracks. Next is The Night Flyer. Very fun Stephen King vampire movie. So definitely a good one to watch. Next is The Craft. Popular horror movie from the 90s. Very fun to watch. Definitely a recognizable title. I just recently watched part 2 not too long ago, The Legacy, and I thought it was okay, just not really the greatest. I just definitely stick with the first one. Next is the 2-disc soundtrack edition of It. Then next is the 2-disc soundtrack edition of It Chapter 2. There. Next is the soundtrack to the remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Very fun remake, and it's actually a very good movie. Next, soundtrack to 30 Days a Night. Another very good vampire movie. That's one of my favorites. Very fun to watch, and yes, as you can tell, it's got a little slip cover and it's got one of those little flimsy cases on there as well. Next is Cabin Fever. The remake is not bad, even though it's pretty much the same thing as this one here. But this movie is actually very fun to watch. I know I'm probably going to get a lot of hate on this, but I also had to get the soundtrack to the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street because the music wasn't really too bad, even though a lot of people don't like Jackie Earle Haley being Freddy Krueger, and a lot of people stick with Robert Englund, which basically, I agree 100%. Robert Englund did a hell of a good job as Freddy. And last but not least, A Quiet Place. This movie is actually a very good movie to watch, and I really enjoyed it. The music is pretty good too, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing part 2 when it comes out. Alright guys, so that's my soundtrack collection. Did you see any soundtracks that you like for my horror soundtracks that I have? If there is, please let me know in the comments down below, and I'd like to hear your thoughts. Also, like and subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for some more videos. Later.